We're going now to go to Gethsemane by way of Herod's Temple because of the juxtaposition of the Temple Mount to the Mount of Olives and Garden of Gethsemane. Gonna kind of go around the corner. We stopped our last tour of the southwest corner of the Temple Mount, the Wailing Wall, and David's palace. Now we're going to go around the corner to the east side, to the Temple Mount and Gethsemane, to see how they are in relationship with each other. And this is where we've been just recently, the Wailing Wall, Wilson's Arch, and Robinson's Arch. This is the entire Temple Mount, surrounded in blue, and then it's across from the Mount of Olives. This picture shows three positions where scholarship believes that Herod's temple might have been on the Temple Mount. The Dome of the Rock is right in the middle there, and some people believe that Herod's temple was originally over the Dome of the Rock, the bedrock there that is the Mosque of Omar. Some believe it's in position A to the south, and some believe in position C. And this is all based on a number of reasons that you can get all the information you want on if you like. But position C is based mostly on Warren's investigations in 1865. He was able to dig shafts down underneath the Temple Mount that are not permitted in the last century. And his discoveries showed several things of Herodian stones and the like that is the reason I believe it was in the C position. And we'll see more of that later. But the next picture is going to see that part of the Temple Mount from the east view. We're looking straight down on it with the east to the right. The next picture is going to come looking from basically the garden of the Mount of Olives. Oh, sorry, it'll be the next picture. This is Herod's Temple. And the next picture will show what it looks like now. There. Now, that's the seat position there, that white patio beyond the east gate is where I believe was probably Herod's Temple. The dome in the distance is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Jesus was crucified. Easily seen that area from here on the top of the first century temple walls, but probably, as you'll see later, you couldn't see it if you were a commoner going on to the Temple Mount because all the walls in between. There's the east gate. We've just gone back to the view finder is from the Mount of Olives. And in front of us, with the trees, the grove of olive trees, is the Garden of Gethsemane. And of course, the eastern gate is in yellow square, with position C, Herod's Temple, behind it. And we're going to take a little tour bus up to that gate. And if you were to be in that tour bus right now, taking a picture, this is the view you would take, looking up the slopes of the Kidron Valley, and looking up at the east gate. Now you see that in front of that east gate is a cemetery. It's an Arab cemetery. It's been there for centuries, and some people believe that the Arabs put the cemetery there because of the law of Judaism that priests and high priests cannot go across a cemetery when there's death, and because Jesus is the high priest in Christian theology, at least. And Christians believe that he's going to enter the Temple Mount through the east gate. They put a cemetery in front of it just to stop him from going through. That's what I guess the local lore is. So they did that, and the conqueror Suleiman sealed that gate. We'll talk about more in a minute. Let's even get closer. I called this cameraman is standing in the forbidden zone. You're really not allowed to go up there. But some people do, and they take pictures like that. This is a close-up of the eastern gate. It's about as close as you can get, and it's even gated off. Now we're going to go on the other side of this. We're going to go on the next picture to the Temple Mount itself, looking back at the other side of the gate to see what it looks like from inside the Temple Mount. So let's climb the wall. The center picture is exactly it. See the two domes in the center of it? And you need to walk down to actually go through the arches of the gate itself. Archaeologists think that it was probably built during the second temple period, so Jesus may have seen the very gate we're looking at now, but it was sealed up completely by Suleiman in 1550. If you look in the distance there's two spires on the mountain just above the gate. That's two spires of the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is famous for having three spires, and that's two of them. And you can see the Church of All Nations dome just to the right of the gate. Well, if you were to stand on top of that gate, which you're not allowed to do, in fact, you can go around the whole city by wall except for the Temple Mount. You're not allowed to do that. At least in 1980 you weren't. I believe it was physically possible to circumnavigate the city entirely by wall. Certainly during the Crusader period it was, when the walls were used for actual defense and for navigating, and the 1st century. But we're going to now go ahead and get up on top of this gate and look straight across the valley. And that's what you would see. That's the Garden of Gethsemane straight across, with the Church of All Nations in the center of the picture, and to the right with the onion domes is the Russian church, and the mountain is the Mount of Olives. And then in the foreground down below you see the steep slopes going down to the Kidron, and the Kidron Brook would be just down in between us and the palm trees, the Brook of Kidron. This is a still shot of the Grotto of Gethsemane, where Jesus left his disciples and he went to pray. The Church of Jerusalem always looked at this site as the place where Jesus was met by Judas and where the Lord was arrested. The veneration of this cave in the valley of Kidron was always attested by St. Jerome in the 4th century. Excavations carried out by the Franciscans in 1956 after a heavy flooding in the valley revealed mosaic fragments going back to the 4th to the 6th centuries, together with other antiquities predating this period. Amongst them were an olive oil press and cistern, which you saw in the video. Well, this is a picture I took, not great quality, but you can barely see towers there. This is a view of the Mount of Olives from the east, as we were ascending up by bus on the Jericho Road. You can see one tower, the other tower, the three towers. You can see the Mount of Olives from the east as well, coming from Jericho. Now, this is at sunset. It's separated from the eastern hill, the Temple Mount, and the City of David by the Kidron Valley. The Mount of Olives has always been an important feature in Jerusalem's landscape. From the 3rd millennium until the present, this 2,900-foot hill has served as one of the main burial grounds for the city. The 2-mile-long ridge has 3 summits, each of which has a tower built on it. One is a privately owned compound, another is the Convent of Ascension, and the third is the Augusta Victoria Hospital compound. Here is the privately owned compound. Don't know anything else about that, but there's the spire. And this is the Russian Church of the Ascension. You can see straight across from the Temple Mount. The Russian Church of the Ascension, despite its name, this church and convent actually commemorates the finding of the buried head of John the Baptist by 2 4th century Syrian monks. The original church was built by St. Helena. In the nearby chapel, a long buried mosaic floor is believed to be from this church. The floor slopes to a hollow, where John the Baptist's head was said to be discovered.
The tower houses an 8-ton bell cast in Russia. In 1885, Russian pilgrims pulled it on a specially built cart from the Jaffa port to the Mount of Olives. There is also nearby the Dome of the Ascension near the summit of the Mount of Olives. The Crusaders built this small octagonal chapel on the foundations of an earlier Byzantine shrine commemorating the spot from which Christ was said to have ascended to heaven. And Acts 1:9-12 says, "After he said this, he was taken up before their very eyes, and a cloud hid him from their sight. They were looking intently up into the sky as he was going, when suddenly 2 men dressed in white stood beside them. 'Men of Galilee,' they said, 'why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who has been taken from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven.' Then they returned to Jerusalem from the hill called the Mount of Olives, a Sabbath day's walk from the city." That's the end of the scripture. The Acts passage. The present cupola and surrounding courtyard wall were added after the Crusader period, when the shrine was placed under the custodianship of an adjacent mosque. This view of the Dome of the Ascension shows clearly its Crusader columns and arches. It has not been possible adequately to investigate the late 4th century shrine foundations beneath the Crusader walls, but early Christian pilgrims' account of this structure, called the Ibomum, indicate that it probably was round rather than octagonal. And the third spire is called Augusta Victoria. It's the common name for a prominent hospital, church, and tower in Jerusalem between the Mount of Olives and Mount Scopus. It constitutes one of the 3 landmark towers that mark the ridge denoting the eastern boundary of Jerusalem. The complex is named for the wife of German Kaiser Wilhelm II, who visited Jerusalem in 1898. The structure, which was completed in 1910, was built by German Catholics as a hostel for pilgrims visiting the Holy Land. From 1920 to 1927, it served as the official residence of the British High Commissioner for Palestine, until that was moved to Arman Nahantsev. Under Jordanian rule, it was a military hospital for soldiers from the Arab Legion. It now serves as a hospital for the Arab residents of East Jerusalem. Augusta Victoria. And these are the ancient olive trees that you'll see in the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives. One is said to be nearly 2,000 years old. Another example of the olive tree on the mount. And this is the Rock of Ascension.